Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Titanforge podcast. A fortuitous episode here for us. I'm Dratnos, of course, joined as always by my friend Tral.
Hello, hello.
And my other friend, Tettles.
Hello, my friend Dratnos.
Hello, indeed. So we are still pre-recorded, as we will continue to be for the next 3 more episodes after this one, and then we'll go back to our regular live recording schedule. But the reason we're pre-recorded is because the MDI is happening, and it's a big thing, and it's a big thing for Trell. Trell, you've improved on your previous seeding placement from the first cup, where you were 6th seed, to 5th seed in this set of time trials for cup number 2. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we were aiming for 4th or 5th. They're pretty much the same seed, so we were happy with 5th. You play the same person no matter what, 4th or 5th, and then you also get put in the same losers bracket after that or the next winning match. 5th is good, but 6th might have been a little bit better depending on how Method EU and Method NA seeded. You never really know, so we're happy with whatever, honestly.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like Method NA, Method EU, and Abracadabra can all be in any of the 1, 2, 3 slots, right? So it's...
Yeah, we got unlucky with the 6th seed the same week as Method EU getting 3rd seed, so we had to play them first.
Right.
It's looking like we're going to have to play them second if we win our first match anyway.
It kind of doesn't matter that, like, you're gonna have to beat good teams pretty quick in this tournament anyway. There's not a way to avoid them for long.
Yeah, it'd be cool if you could somehow go to 3rd without playing Method EU, though. I think there is a possibility of that.
Yes.
Certain seedings.
Yeah, definitely. Although, yeah, I mean, getting knocked into the lower bracket and getting 3rd that way is definitely something you could do.
Hear me out. Get 1st seed.
True.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just do a 13-minute Toldagor and a 22-minute KR.
And
Okay.
a 22-minute King's Rest.
Mhm.
Method EU only got 22-12 or something, so I could see you guys getting a 22 flat.
Yeah. 22-minute King's Rest. Dude, that's faster than, like, other dungeons have been done in some like cup play.
As a point of reference, yes, we had 3 30-minute dungeons this week for East Cup. It was like a freehold into a Shrine of the Storm into a Waycrest Manor. They were all done in like 30 minutes. So
A 22-minute King's Rest, yeah. A dungeon that takes, like, actually twice as long as those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Insane. An absurd time trial coming out there from those powerful gamers. But you had some pretty good time trials as well yourself, so I think
Yeah, we actually ended up with a really good Toldagor route. We didn't quite do it on our time trials. We only did 3 out of 5 of our attempts. We were getting really tired. We saw our seating and we were like, okay, that's good. But we could have done a little bit faster on Toldagor. A little bit faster.
All right, and an update from myself and Tettles. I am working on Queen Ajara right now. We have her at about 50%, so kill could come this week or next week. Could be pretty exciting. We're through. We're working on that last phase now. Well, we're working on getting into that last phase cleanly now. Tettles, how about you? What have you been up to?
bench for raid because I have literal poverty gear.
Ah.
Beyond that,
Feels bad, man.
I mean, it just happens. I mean, some tiers you just don't have 65 neck and you have terrible Azurite, so whatever. Beyond that, I'm just casting. Hanging out.
I hear you. Did you go to this amusement park that all the other casters were tweeting about?
Oh yeah, dude, I went to Cedar Point. Hell yeah, that was fun.
Awesome.
I saw the group picture. There was a lot of faces I didn't really know because they're behind the scenes.
Yeah, they're production people. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool. So yes, West Cup number 2 this weekend. We'll be watching that close. Well, I guess Tettles will be casting it, Trell will be competing in it, and I'll be watching that along with the rest of you listeners, and we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, I want to take a brief bit of time to kind of shout out or talk about the direction of our show going forward. So, of course, our Twitter, Titanforge WoW, is the best place to follow and stay current with whatever we're up to, and also send us questions to answer on our show. We'll always tweet out our topic at least 12 hours in advance of recording the show, so you'll have at least 12 hours warning to come up with some questions to get them into the Q&A segment. Then we are also excited to announce that we are opening up a Patreon page for our show due to popular demand, popular request. We've been asked about this for a while now, and we've finally come up with some tiers that have some rewards that we think are compelling. So we've made our Patreon page. So let's, I guess, go through a little bit of what we're doing here. We have like 5 different tiers of rewards. So for $1 per month, you support the show and you get a special role and access to the Patreon only section of our Discord. Now, hang on a sec. You might be thinking, your Discord. That's another piece of news that we have for you. Is we've got our we obviously record this show on Discord, but we're opening up a public Discord as well. So a public Titanforge podcast Discord. That'll be a place where going forward, anybody can enter. You don't have to be a patron or anything to be in the Discord, but there are special Patreon channels as well. And in that Discord, you can talk to us, ask us questions. We'll take question submissions there as well for the show, and we'll have other stuff going on in there too. And probably sometime there'll be keys or whatever going on in that Discord too. So we'll have invite links to that Discord in the show notes wherever you're finding this show, or just anytime you can also ask one of us, and we'll make you one too. So join us in there, hang out. It'll be a fun place to be. That'll be where all the cool kids hang out. I expect that Discord will skyrocket up to the you know how you have your kind of Discord server power rankings, right? Where it's like how high up you have all the different Discord servers.
Yeah,
right?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, this one's gonna. I think this is gonna be a pretty popular like first place Discord, like the one right at the top underneath the top left, Discord profile button. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it pans out.
Currently is the top for me.
Yeah, that's because it's the most recently created.
Same here. Wow.
Well,
yeah,
that's
okay.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
True. Anyway, yeah. So check out our Discord. Anyways, let me quickly give you the sell on some of the other things that we've got on our Patreon here. For $5 a month, you, in addition to getting access to a special Patreon only section of our Discord, you'll get our show notes every week, which is the stuff we use to outline the show and talk about our topics. And whenever we do a topic that requires Patreon input or submissions, so this is like if we did a UI review episode, if we did a log review episode, if we did basically anything that required some smallish number of people to contribute things for us to do for an episode, it will be at this tier or higher, so at $5 a month or higher, that we'll start looking for input there. Then $10 or more per month, that's the Titanforge tier. They all have neat little names like what can happen to your items in game thanks to the great RNG system, which, by the way, if Blizzard changes the way that Titan forging works due to popular request, we're going to have to completely rework this Patreon. So I've changed my mind. I'm now pro them keeping Titan forging exactly as is so that I don't have to do that.
Wait, do we have to change our show name if they remove Titan forging altogether?
Oof.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah. So
the show formerly known as Titanforge Podcast.
We'll just turn ourselves into like Loot Council. Master Looter, yeah. That's okay. That's a good name. I'm not too worried. We'll be okay. But yeah, so for $10 or more per month, we'll have another channel in our Discord where you can give us topic ideas and vote on topic ideas whenever we have you know how we did an Atal'Dazar episode recently? If we were to do one of those again, we'd probably have a couple different dungeons. Like the next time we do one, and we'll have the people in this tier or higher vote for which dungeon we do next. So that would be cool. And then you can also just at any time suggest an idea for us, and it'll be in a special Discord channel, and much more likely for us to listen to than a random DM. Although we will still, of course, listen to random DMs from anybody.
Our shows are pretty fluid week to week, I must admit.
Yeah,
so
we're like honestly, like you paying us to suggest topics for us is like that's two good things for us. So we're happy. We're happy on that one.
Yep.
Okay, then for $20 or more per month, this is the Titanforged with a socket tier. Okay. That will also get you thanked by name each episode. So you tell us what name you want to use, and every single episode you'll get to hear your own name or somebody else's name. If you want to troll, pick some fun name. War Chief Garrosh Hellscream, for instance, you could have us shout out every show, or any of your favorite war chiefs. Then for $30 or more per month, this is the highest tier we've got. Titanforged with a socket and leech. You will have the ability.
Jackpot.
For the duration of your patronage, you will own a voice channel in our Discord, and you can name it just whatever you want. So if if you're in our Discord, you'll see there's some funny name voice channels. All three of us will have one, and you will have one there with us. And you can, if you want it to be like capped to a certain number of people, or have a certain topic be what you do, or if you want to own the AFK channel in our Discord, you can do that. So that's the big prize there.
I'm going to name mine the Trails Bursting Necrotic Nightmare, personally.
That is totally allowed. You can do that. So that's our Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, it'll help us keep it going every month and pay for some of the costs that are associated with hosting a podcast, which are not massive, but might become more massive as the operation expands, if the operation expands. If you're interested in supporting the show, but you don't want to pay us any money or anything, which I totally understand, one thing you can do is tell your friends about us or review us on iTunes. Those are extremely useful things that help us without costing you any money. So we appreciate all the support we've gotten so far and all the positive feedback. And thanks so much to really everybody for helping make this thing possible.
Yeah, we certainly do.
All right, so let's move on to our main topics this week. This week we've got 3 medium-sized topics. The first is Void Weeks, which is, I guess we'll define that in a bit as we start that topic. And let me just tease the next 2 topics. Then we'll talk about Tyrannical versus Fortified and how that's changed over the seasons and over the expansions. And then we'll talk about padding in M+, which is like the ratio of priority damage to overall damage and whether you're AoEing too hard. These are kind of things that you'll hear players talk about, and we'll kind of really dive into that and come up with an answer to, does padding exist in M+? What does it look like? Is it ever bad? Is it ever not bad? So those are our main topics. Let's start off with Void Week, though. Tettles, what is a Void Week?
So basically, there are 3 rotations of emissaries. There's like the Enchanted Emissary week, where there will be like an Enchanted Emissary heavy dungeon for like across all of dungeons, and there'll be like that for the whole entire week. And then there'll be a Tides one, and there'll be a Void heavy one. And basically, it just means that there's a disproportionately large amount of that emissary in each dungeon per week.
Yeah, so it's not like all 3 dungeons are present in all 3 dungeons, and there are some dungeons where, like even on Void Week, the most problematic pull might be a Tides in a certain pack in a dungeon or whatever.
Yeah.
Although it's rarely a Tides because you can always just root that thing or whatever. But even on non-Void Weeks, there might be problematic voids in places, for instance. But on Void Week, there's way more voids than other weeks, and it's a lot more likely to cause problems to your routes because voids are the ones that interact with your skips because they have True Sight, so they'll mess with your shroud. And there's kind of not there's not a lot of creative ways to deal with them. The thing about the Enchanted Emissaries and the Tides Emissaries is that both of them can basically be soloed by a Resto Druid, and most groups have a Resto Druid. So in MDI setting and in high key pushing setting, usually those emissaries are pretty ignorable, right? You can just kind of spam root the Tides or have them Typhoon and Vortex and Sunfire and Moonfire the Enchanted Emissary, and it's pretty much taken care of, right?
Not only that, you can not even pull them in some cases, just to like knock them away and keep them out of combat, whereas the Void is rooted. So
you can also do that
ring,
the Ring of Peace trick too, where you'll just like completely knock it out of the pack because it's actually not linked to the packs that they're sitting inside of.
Yeah, and it's possible. Like they're basically the Voids kind of narrow down the possibilities to deal with them. Like you death skip past them, you find a route that doesn't even go next to them, which in some cases is impossible when they're placed at choke points, or you kill them. And when you kill them, you have to either line of sight their casts if you're going to leave them up for a while, or you have to nuke them down and beat a DPS check. And that DPS check scales pretty heavily with the dungeon level, right? So as you start getting to these push keys, that DPS check starts becoming unrealistic in a lot of cases, especially okay, if you're going to focus all your damage on the Void, there's probably other problematic enemies that it's next to that you're just ignoring then, and you're going to leave them up for a really long time. Or you're fighting the Void by itself, and then you're being really inefficient in terms of time spent in the dungeon, right?
Yeah, because you can always pull. So basically, they have like a 60-yard range on where their explosion is. So you could always pull the trash pack that's associated with them far enough back to where you're not going to instantly die to the Void explosion. However, like you said, that's very inefficient and not exactly. It just becomes not practical for a lot of spots, unfortunately.
It's not even possible in some cases. Listening to this, the options for Void Emissary, I'm thinking of the last pack in Shrine of the Storm, right next to the last boss. There's a Void Emissary. You can't kite those mobs because they move super slow and then they start casting immediately, and you have to kick them. So you actually have to fight the Void with them and either burn one of the casters or the Void, whichever one you think is going to be more dangerous. That's a tough one on the high keys.
I mean, okay, so on the upside, though, the Void Emissary does do % health damage, so your healer's not actually going to die to the explosion, but it is still obnoxious, like you're saying, right?
Yeah. I mean, your healer does also have a lot of damage to help you kill that one, but if you're playing a group with double ranged, you're on a very, very tight timer on how quickly you need to kill those casters before you run out of kicks, right?
We did a plus 20 last night with one range, and it was still really close. So we burned the caster first, and then the Void Emissary, and that was like he was about to get his third cast off right as the Void Emissary died on him. It was already really, really dangerous.
Yeah, your healer having promises of power buff actually makes it a little bit more doable, but like you're saying, it's still like it's a big question mark as to whether or not it should even be like.
Yeah, the gist of it is it's hard to deal with them sometimes, and you don't have too many options of what to do. You have to just figure out how to burn them in time. In some cases, you can skip. Yeah, they're tough.
Yeah, and so Void Week is, you have to deal with twice as many of these per dungeon. So there are some dungeons that just get really, really hard on Void Week. Ataldazar, Temple of Citralis are kind of two big examples of this, where there are some extremely, extremely rough Void Emissary placements that force you to either pull packs that you normally wouldn't pull, or make it so that you have to skip them in a much more complicated way. So you're having to do some kind of death skip instead of being able to shroud, which, I think just switching to death skips is something that is the best way to answer this in a lot of spots. Like the Ataldazar one that is outside of Volkal's room. I think you just death skip in, and then you can just get out by everybody dying and going back to the front. That's like, you run down to the bottom of the stairs, you click the lever, and then everybody dies, and you're back to the front. That's a strategy that I've been using unironically, and it's been working out okay in Ataldazar.
That actually probably is the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's the only way to deal with that. But Ataldazar's timer is pretty tight now since they buffed all the bosses, right?
Yeah, it's not like you're committing 2 of your minutes, of which you probably only had about 2 to give, to doing all this kind of skip shenanigans that you used to be able to do for free with Shroud. And
or you still can do for free. Is part of the problem is that it's just disproportionate.
You still can do for free?
I mean, you still can do for free on other weeks. It's just not on the Void.
Right. Yes. Yeah, so Void Week being disproportionately hard compared to the other weeks is what. Yeah. Yes. It's weird. It's because like Infested, there were some Infested patterns, because Infested was also on this 3-week pattern, and there were some Infested patterns that were really rough, but a lot of those actually got nerfed. Like some of the roughest Infesteds in the game did get nerfed. Like the ones where there was, small infested things next to big unCCable stuff, or like big unCCable infested stuff next to a lot of other medium-sized things. Those ended up taking some nerfs throughout the course of the infested season.
I remember that siege. Did that critter and freehold ever get changed?
The critter was never changed. No, that's
was still
yeah. That's been.
I forgot about that.
That was so funny.
Troll as hell, dude.
Yeah, you would just go to the Ravager pool, and there'd be 2 Goonies for no reason. You're just like, what's happening?
Someone looked at it funny, and the rat died, and then they're
or the Ataldazar guys like die on pull or what? Like those 3 guys that are fighting.
The RP mobs that die when you walk close to them, and one of them would be infested on one of the weeks. Yeah,
that was really troll too. I forgot about that.
Dude, that was such a long. It's a shame that our podcast did not exist back then, because it would have been really fun to make fun of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we have these problematic void weeks. I guess just being harder than the other weeks is something that, I don't know, it seems like the 3 weeks should be roughly balanced in terms of difficulty. So
yeah,
and it's not, and that's our thesis here with Void Week.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time you can't just like run in and like face tank it either, due to just like whatever pack it's next to or whatever else, because your tank is going to like get instantly killed, because unfortunately it does percentage health damage.
Yeah, and okay, another thing about the voids is that the other emissaries, there's ways to like make a play to fix the pull if something is going wrong. Like, okay, the tides adds in, somebody can use their engineering belt to knock it away and kick something, and that saves the pull. Yeah, or taunt it and run away. So there's all these opportunities for somebody to make a cool play. Really, the only cool play that somebody can make with a void is like the healer healing really, really well to save everybody from the second explosion, right? Like doing something big to, keep everybody alive at 10% health coming out of that second explosion. But outside of that, there's not really this agency in your DPS or your tank to like do something to interact with the emissary, right? The only thing they can do is just do their damage as efficiently as possible, or do their healing as efficiently as possible, or pop defensives, and that's all there is to it. It's rooted. It's not CCable. It's not possible to interact with it in any way.
I mean, as like a overarching like statement though, it's kind of silly that Void Emissary can be shadow melded off too.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
certainly,
Alliance has the they basically can just do the shroud thing for free every 2 minutes on the whole group, right? Anytime they want. So assuming you're all playing Night Elf, which you do in MDI, and I think there are probably some push groups that do it on live, but it's definitely the best thing you can be doing in keys.
I mean, some teams play Horde for Borealis and under Rot, but yeah, pretty much everybody else is aligned.
Okay. Yeah, so those are some of the things about Void that makes them really problematic. Another thing that is rough about the Void emissaries is, okay, so like if you do try to line of sight them, there's a lot of like times when I'm streaming or whatever, people will just say, you know, line of sight the Void, but there's a lot of spots where to line of sight a Void you have to walk for 3 seconds, line of sight, and then walk for 3 seconds to get back to the Void. So you're talking about a 9-second cast or whatever, and you're spending 2/3 of the cast running away and then running back. It's really slow to do that. So there are spots where the Voids can be safe but slow, and safe but slow is not something that's actually acceptable in high keys, right? You can't do that in time keys all that often throughout a key. So
do you think it should be acceptable in the game, like at all, to require you to have to require pull to take just like such a significant amount longer time compared, because like you have to be running back and forth like?
I think it's really lame.
It's kind of a philosophy we'll talk about more when we get to Tyrannical versus Fortified, like just how long and boring and stuff some of the encounters can get in these high keys with the designs of stuff as they are now. But I think that it's okay if you can go slow and safe on a pack. Like if the opportunity is there to CC one mob, like there are all these pulls that, you know, some groups will CC something and make the pull easier and slower. And that's fine. The problem is when you're forced to do that and you can't do a big pull or do like, there's no good way to do something quicker and more dangerously. The game just like instantly one-shots you if you try to do that, as it does with Voids in some spots. That's where I think there's a problem.
Sure. Okay, I understand.
So I think that the Voids, like, I don't know exactly how to do it, but if there was some way that we could, you know, have a hope of killing them more quickly and taking a riskier strategy that gave a bigger reward to pull off instead of just kind of being forced to do this this like hope we killed, you know, just do your damage buttons and healing buttons thing. Okay, one final thing about the Void Week is that Void Week changes dramatically in difficulty with the addition of certain other affixes. So Quaking is currently active in the current Void Week that we're in right now, as of the time of recording this, and that particular combination is very rough when there's an overlap. Now, there is some counterplay to this, right? You can time pulling a Void. Like Quaking is on a predictable timer. It's on a 20-second interval. So you can wait a couple seconds to stop the worst overlaps from happening here. But if you don't do that like you can die even on the first Void if it lines up with a Quake.
Yeah, some of them have really tight LOS spots. Like when all 5 of you have to go LOS and suddenly Quaking comes out. That's instant death no matter what. If it's like only the one little LOS spot.
Apparently Toldagor is a bit ridiculous this week with Quaking plus Void Emissary.
Yeah, Toldagor and Quaking is already hard enough when you don't have to line of sight and cram into a space. Like if you just have the whole hallway, but when you have a sliver of the hallway to spread out in, it's really, really bad. So you're in this kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't spot when a Quaking comes out while you're fighting a Void, where you either have to line it and all stack or spread, but you're all going to take the Void hit as well.
I mean, it's also a bit rough, especially since most groups have a lot of melee, like right now too. So your tank like could actually just instantly get killed by the Void cast plus the Quaking going on.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about the Void. Is like we talked about Void being something that it's better to like ranged has an advantage on compared to melee, but that hasn't been enough to like make ranged better overall in dungeons for the most part. Like there are a couple of you can push now with 1 or 2 range in your keys. Usually 1, right? Most groups have like, you know, a hunter.
Yeah,
or
1
a
is
mage.
usually okay.
What about our Sethralis?
Yeah, you know, then I mean, I've done some triple range runs this patch, and it's
oh no, man.
You know, it can work depending on what your range are. Like there's ways to cover the deficiencies, but those bring deficiencies of their own along the way. So every deviation from the optimal comp hurts a little bit in a different way. So that it is true though that having more range does make the Voids a little bit easier to deal with, right? Because the whole like walk 3 seconds on both sides thing goes away if you're playing ranged. So that is something that does answer them in some spots, but usually that's not an answer that groups are actually able to do because it just hurts too much in other places.
Yeah. And melee can kind of do the same thing with immunities. They can stay in for a full cast plus however many seconds before they have to walk out.
Rogue is pretty good at this, right? They can go like feint, cloak, feint, and be taking very low damage even if there's other high group damage going out. And if they don't need to feint the first one, they can just go like take it, feint, cloak, feint, and they can just tank any number basically from there.
I mean, a lot of time I feel like the tank is dying, not necessarily even like the rest of the group.
Yeah, and a good tank here can use big walls and do like leap out, charge back in type shenanigans with the void explosions.
I mean, but they're rarely doing the void by itself, right?
That's the thing, is you have to be able to survive. Like, but something like sweep the mobs under the void, line, come back.
Sure.
It depends on what you're fighting, right? Though that's the thing is there are some packs where like if you tried to just honestly fight 2 witch doctors, 2 honor guards, and 1 void outside of Volkal's room, like. What are you supposed to do there? How are you supposed to... Those are 5 lethal targets all at once.
So here's what you do. You type !keys in your party chat, and you see what other members of your group have, and you say, we're going here instead.
Yeah, you keep attempting that pull. You keep resetting the keystone and attempting that pull until you get down to keystone level 9, where there's no longer a void emissary there.
Yes, correct.
We've solved it.
Drop it 3-chested.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and other rough combos with voids. Grievous is another affix that does some really nasty things with void emissaries, where like that 3rd cast or whatever will bring everybody down to 10% health and start stacking Grievous on them, and that's a bad place to be.
Or your healer may actually just not be able to recover from the 2nd stack, and you might not actually be top, so you might actually just die.
Yeah, it has a tremendous amount of extra throughput required to an already throughput intensive experience of healing a void emissaries 2nd cast.
Yeah.
So that combo can be rough. I don't know if we have void weeks that have Grievous yet. I don't know if we know the full schedule or anything, but even on non-void weeks, dealing with voids when Grievous is out is challenging. Then also there are some of the other affixes do play against against void emissaries. Sanguine doesn't heal them anymore, thankfully, so it's not too bad. But it can deny all the space under them for your melee potentially if you mess things up. Necrotic can make it so your tank, who's trying to tank a bunch of mobs under the void emissary, is also forced to kite, and it's impossible to kite and stand still at the same time generally. So that puts them in a bit of a pickle. As Trell, our expert tank necrotic specialist, could tell you.
Yeah, you gotta see the future and like map out how many necrotic sects you're gonna have, and if you can't LOS, how much damage you're gonna take from the.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like all the emissaries and how they're affected by affixes. Necrotic really makes any emissary hard except for Arcane. Like Necrotic with Tides means you can't kite until the Tides is dead, unless you play around it and keep the Tides out of the pack. But like Void, same kind of story, but you can't move the Void, so you have to move. There's a lot of interesting interactions with the affixes plus Beguiling.
Mm-hmm. There's I would say the Void is the emissary most affected though. Like the interaction between Quaking and Grievous and the Void is I think bigger than any of the other combinations of affix and emissary.
Yeah, I agree. I don't actually know if emissaries spawn explosive.
I was just thinking that, yeah, enchanted plus explosive. I don't know if I've seen that. I think it's been a while since we had explosive as well. I think explosive was like 6 weeks ago now.
Teaming and Tides could be
true,
also equally challenging.
Teaming plus Void is also rough, right? Like teaming Void pulls. There are some of those Void pulls can get quite a bit hairier when they're in a teaming setting. Although if you have a sub rogue, they get more combo points. They sub down the Void faster. So
we'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm. We actually will. So yeah, I guess that's our synopsis of the Void weeks. I guess our summary is that it's a rough week. It's harder than the other weeks by quite a bit. There are some dungeons in particular that it's disproportionately hard at. There's some affixes that it's disproportionately hard at. But pretty much everywhere it's harder on Void weeks, especially for like Resto Druid double rogue comps have really good tools to deal with Tide emissaries and enchanted emissaries, and they don't have good tools to deal with the Void emissaries.
Does any comp actually have good tools to deal with Void emissaries, though? I guess would be a different question, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I personally have been finding, like, I've been doing Prop Paladin Resto Shaman keys, and like Spirit Link and Bubble are 2 extremely powerful tools against Void emissaries. So
I think Fire Mage is really good against Void.
Yeah, Fire
For
Mage-
Void means it's going to die before the second cast, even on a 20.
that's true.
It's really, really incredible.
The Fire Mage combustion is actually, it's really useful for a number of different like spots in Mythic Plus, and we'll talk about that again later when we talk about prior damage. But that's true. So there are things that are good against Void, but the kind of main meta comp of like Resto Druid Double Rogue is not good against Void, and that makes this the kind of week that you'll see fewer really high keys pushed. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some other affixes that are not Beguiling. Tyrannical and Fortified. So since the history of Mythic Plus, Tyrannical and Fortified have undergone some changes, right? These two affixes have always been here, although in Legion they used to be on the level 10 tier, so now they're on the level 2 tier. Every M plus key has either Tyrannical or Fortified active. They've received nerfs to how impactful they were. Back at the start of Legion, they were a bigger scaler on boss health and damage or on trash health and damage than they are now. That those all got nerfed down. And I remember there were some specific bosses that they extra nerfed Tyrannical on because Tyrannical was super rough on those bosses. I don't know if you remember, like early Legion, there was some like Tyrannical Fell Lord Zakum or whatever nonsense where it was one-shotting everybody and that kind of stuff the first couple weeks.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but he would one-shot everybody in my group anyways. I played with a Hunter and a Disc Priest for a little bit. Malvos and Hunte would actually be screaming at one another over like Clarity of Will shielding, and I'm just like, playing a Moonkin, I don't take any damage from that AoE because it was physical, so I was just like, all right, I guess we're just gonna wing it. I hope they live.
Wing it, Moonkin. I get it.
Yes. Yeah, no, that was pretty rough. I mean, Legion was more about one shots than it is now. Honestly, BFA keys are way better than that.
Yeah,
that reminded me on that boss. Brewmaster had a tool where, and early in the expansion, they could cast Explosive Keg on that boss.
I forgot.
Everyone in the party would dodge the cast because of that.
Yeah,
awesome.
That was why they changed Explosive Keg to be like a 99% damage reduction instead of 100% mischance or whatever.
There was also, I think it was like Mistress Sazine, I think is why they fixed that though, right? Because she would lightning your whole group or some shit. I think it was also one of the reasons that they fixed it. There was a couple of reasons. It wasn't just Zakum.
Well, Zakum was definitely one of them though, yeah.
Yeah, Zakum was one. I think the Mistress thing with Brewmaster was you couldn't dodge the hit on the group or something. I can't remember what it was actually.
It was something where you lightning the whole group. Oh, was it not? Okay, whatever it was. It
was just something to do with Monk Mastery.
I definitely remember getting zapped a lot on that boss. Yeah, with Monk tanks, so it might have been something there.
It wasn't Zakun, it was Zakal. Okay. That was his name. It was Fellord Zakal.
Zakal? All right.
Was that the Archway boss?
Yeah, the Archway one is the one I'm thinking of. Where's Zakum from?
The Fell Lord boss.
I think it was Fellord Zakul, and I think he was from Hellfire Citadel.
Wait, Zakul is from this place. It's from Eternal Palace.
Wait. Maybe Zakun is from Hellfire Citadel.
Okay, well, there is a Fell Lord in the Archway, and that's the one that we were referring to for this discussion. Not the one from Eternal Palace or Hellfire Citadel or anything.
It's been so long.
It has been, and they all have very similar names, to be fair. Okay, so we've got that was kind of Legion. Legion Tyrannical was generally the better week to push on, right? Because...
Wait, did you say Legion Tyrannical? You mean Fortified?
Sorry, yeah, Legion Fortified because the Tyrannical one-shots started to become like just insurmountable at a certain difficulty. Then we got to early BFA, and early BFA, it seemed like Tyrannical was the best week to be pushing on instead because the trash all got a big buff, and all of it needed to be dealt with, and you couldn't just like AoE it down regardless of how much health it had.
How much of that was because of Infested, and how much of that was because...
Certainly some of it was Infested, yeah, and Gahunis were, scaled off of Fortified, and,
I think a lot of it was just the value of damage that all the mobs did to tanks was so much higher at the beginning of BFA than in Legion. Like, tanks just couldn't survive Fortified. There was so much...
Yeah, sure. Legion Blood Death Knight or whatever could just survive an infinite number of mobs during its cooldowns, and then it could kite an infinite number of mobs forever. Whereas BFA has all these kind of anti-kite mechanics in mobs, right? So you're in a Taltazar and you try and kite, and the Honor Guard's just gonna slice the melee that it's next to.
Yep.
So that has kind of been part of the effect there. But recently, this with season 2, late season 2, starting and then moving into season 3, Fortified is kind of back on top as best push week, I'd say. because these tyrannical bosses are just starting to take so long, and they're starting to also get pretty dangerous. They're starting to get kind of numbers challenging, although there's not too many that are numbers challenging. It's more just like length of time it takes. Like 5-minute boss fights is just that just takes so long out of your dungeon. You have so little time to do trash. Whereas with Fortified, you can usually do pretty good efficient AoE damage, and everybody in your group can have a good AoE spec, right?
I mean, you also miss a lot of like checks where, for example, for like Yasma on Ataldazar, like you'll get like 4 more soul rends, so you have to like run out and kill the soul rend mobs too. Whereas opposed to if it's on Fortified, if you skip all the soul rends, you get back the time from the health differential on the boss, plus the time that you would actually have to deal with the soul rends. So it's like breakpoints that you're actually meeting too. So.
Yeah, Kragmaw the Infested is a good example of this, right? Like 2 extra tantrums is a bunch of extra time that you're doing, plus all the healing you have to do during the tantrums.
Yeah,
that makes it harder.
Extra
Volzith,
phase on the
the last boss in Shrine of the Storm, like extra phases, right, are just something that makes tyrannical bosses add increasingly more time to the dungeon.
I mean, Adders and Aspects are also a good example of this too, where like swapping back and forth on Lightning Shield just takes like forever.
Yeah, although as long as you have that Prot Warrior in there, that's kind of one where the tyrannical scaling the damage and spell reflection interaction is keeps the time kind of capped.
True.
Volcall used to have this interaction as well, where it dealt increasingly more damage to itself as tyrannical scaled up in a way that caused the fight to always be the same length, right? Always be nice and short.
Yeah.
First boss of Underrot in season 2 was actually easier the higher the key was, because the warrior would reflect more and more damage.
Yeah, you were getting one shot by a bolt on a 15 or a 20, but on a 20 the bolt was doing like twice as much damage to the boss, and so it was dead a lot faster. Yeah, that was a good time.
Base tank season 2 was like a 1.2 million hit on the boss from Story. So insane.
Did you see the 4 Prot Warrior plus 30 Underrot that Limit Max did on the tournament realm? With 4 Prot Warriors, 1 Holy Paladin, and they just got to the first boss on a plus 30 keystone from the tournament realm and just killed it with spell reflects only. That's
hilarious.
Yeah, the boss was taking like 20% chunks on every blood bolt.
Yeah. So you can just face tank Leax's bolt now, right?
Yes, you can. On pretty much any key level, it's like it hurts.
You don't want to take 2 at the same time, but yeah, you can take 1.
Yeah.
Pretty consecutively.
And you can use it defensive, and it does a big help in preventing it, instead of before where you'd use it defensive and still die. Still just get completely one shot. So LOX, a much better fight now. Much better fight. Much less of this kind of kick everything and you win, don't kick, like miss one kick and you die type thing, which was pretty
after
dumb. 2
big nerfs to it over the last year, it's safe to say it's now balanced.
Oh, dude, I forgot about version 1 Liaxa, where it spawned 1 ad, then 2 ads, then 3 ads, and like
yes,
you needed to beat
Holy
that DPS check.
Shit, dude.
Yeah,
because you couldn't get the 2 ads because you just instantly lost. It was like, what the
yeah.
If that fight was still the same, in phase 2, it would spawn 2 ads, and then there would be 3 bosses that would all hit for 1.2 million every cat.
Yeah, dude, could you imagine if you got a triple reflect though? It's like
you'd have to.
Yeah, but actually, that version of the fight would be kind of fine now that the blood bolts do less damage. Like if you just tanked some of the ad casts on them on that second.
Not.
Dude,
it would absolutely not.
It would actually be fine. It would actually be fine. You'd be okay. I stand by. They could revert that change now. That first change now that they've fixed blood bolt scaling.
All right, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like once you get 2 ads, I think tank dies anyway on this level.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
You let the ad casts go through. The ad casts really don't hurt very much these days. Like
they were half healthing me on a 21.
Yeah, half health. Like just heal. Like there's not any other healing going on in that fight. Just use your defensives on it. What do you mean?
Just heal. Pop your 8-minute cooldown.
Yeah. It's called. It's an 8-minute cooldown that's up every 3 minutes. Let's. All
right.
Yes. Fortifying Brew.
Mm-hmm.
It'll reduce the magic damage by like 8%.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an 8-minute cooldown, so it sounds nice, right?
Yeah, 8%, 8 minutes. The math checks out.
Honestly, you should just like scream. I don't want to use my 8-minute cooldown here. I don't want to use my 8-minute cooldown here. Just to make sure that people know that it's a real cooldown.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a better cooldown for that one, Ted. It's called Zen Meditation, 5-minute cooldown.
Oh, yes.
Or Dampen Harm.
Dampen Harm, also very good. 2-minute cooldown.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
So let's kind of revisit a question that we asked, I think, in one of the first episodes of the Titanforge podcast, back long ago at the beginning of this incredible journey that the three of us have gone on together, where we were talking about what the highest level keystone in season 3 was going to be, and I believe my prediction was 25.
Yeah.
You guys were on 23 or 24 or something.
Yeah.
I think it's 24.
What are we looking at right now? It's Timed Runs leaderboard. 22s have been done.
22s are done, but like some of the top teams are just doing MDI right now, and people are still getting gear, so people are taking it a little bit slower.
Yeah, very few of these teams had neck level 65, which will be coming out in the next
Yeah.
couple weeks for pretty much everybody. So that
Strats aren't really fleshed out yet either. I think we're going to see 25s at least.
I think that
maybe
yeah,
26.
I think a 25 or 2 at least should be something that we see. 26 is I don't know. I mean, essences are really powerful, but there are definitely some like void emissaries. Just I guess the thing about like if you have a fire mage in your group, you could do that on even a high key. So
I mean,
perhaps,
maybe.
yeah, I don't know.
It,
Fire Mage is
it depends
really
on how
good.
the Void Emissary's health scales, because that shit scales
I definitely expect.
very.
I expect Fortified to be the affix that is
Dungeon.
active on the highest run dungeons this time around.
What will be the
Phil.
dungeon?
What will be the dungeon? Okay.
Like a shrine, maybe?
I want to say Underrot. I'm gonna take Underrot.
Okay.
I
Underrot.
could still say
actually see that.
Freehold.
Oh, Freehold's a really good choice. Yeah, Freehold. I like Freehold. I think Freehold and Underrot.
It would have to be a Jolly Raw week, huh? But it is doable.
There are some good Jolly Raw weeks though. Honestly, like I guess it would be Jolly Raw Fortified. So there's 2 candidates for that. We don't know what one of the affixes are for those, but
Yeah.
we'll take a look.
You could also bring a Fire Mage to that too, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I like Freehold. I think that's a pretty good call. I do think I think that with Beguiling you kind of expect these wide open non-linear dungeons to really be the ones where there's good times in, because you can develop good strategies that just involve pulling innovatively and skipping certain emissaries. And I think Freehold and Underrot are 2 of the most open dungeons in terms of what you can pull.
Or
Yeah,
we just
agreed.
have Nerf and his whole team go Alliance for 1 week of the season and do a 27 or something.
Yes, Alliance could certainly do. Like, I think that the difference between like how high a push group could push on Alliance is probably higher this season than it has been last season. And
Yeah.
last season was
Would agree.
last season maybe Alliance was a bigger deal in MDI, but I think this season Alliance is a bigger deal for key pushing.
I mean, especially if all 5 of your people know how to use Shadow Meld correctly.
That's the thing, right? It's got to be everybody.
It does take some practice for Shadow Meld skips as a group. It has to be up in time. You got to do it safely around a corner. You got to make sure mobs aren't gonna come around the corner right as you Shadow Meld. Something like
There are some, I've watched enough of Trell's practice streams to see them just like just
dying to Shadow Meld
attempt
skips
the meld
over
and then
and
just like somebody's still in combat somehow, or everybody melds and one of the mobs is just right there and just slaps Trell again. And
Yeah, he's like, fine, I'll just ring a piece in the doorway, dude. It's fine.
Mhm.
And then Stagger breaks me out of Shadow Meld and we all die. Yeah, it's
Oh
fine.
yeah, I forgot about that.
Oh yeah. Stagger is a great combo. Like Stagger breaking you out of Shroud is so good on like quaking and stuff. That's really great.
Oh man, there's so many things. Stagger breaks you out of stealth, and also Null Barrier. The damage from rank 3 Null Barrier will break you out of
that. That's fucking hysterical.
That happened in our time trials for the first time on our real attempt in King's Rest, and I was like, "What? How did this never happen in practice?" And
Like,
Null
no
Barrier
barriers
exploded.
out. You're like, what?
Yeah,
You do hate to see that. Yeah, that's rough. Gotta make the cancel or a null barrier.
it's actually
cancel it.
impossible.
You can't cancel it off.
You have to sit there and wait before you shroud for
No, man.
like 15 seconds for the Null Barrier to expire, blow up, and then you can shroud.
Brutal. Okay.
Brutal.
So just to close out our topic here, Tyrannical and Fortified. The two, these have been with us forever. I guess we've talked a little bit about this in the past. I think all 3 of us have kind of been on this position of just remove these 2 affixes. I don't know if anybody would like to continue to support that point or has a different idea for how these things should go going forward.
Yeah, I still think remove because there's seasonal affixes, so it changes it up a lot from season to season. If it weren't for seasonal affixes, I think I'd be okay with Tyrannical Fortified, but
it's also
not
awkward.
sure.
The dungeons scale linearly too. Like they're never ending, so you're just going to like this is just an upper end issue. Like this is like a 1% issue, but at the upper end, you're going to have like this disproportionate like dungeon between like a 24 being done on a fortified week and like a 21 being done on a tyrannical week for some dungeons, just because of how the health scales, unfortunately.
Yeah, because these issues are all amplified due to the way the scaling works at the higher levels. Each additional level is like a massively bigger jump, and that is amplified further in either fortified or tyrannical.
What about like the upper Mechagon area with all the bosses that you're gonna have for whenever that ends up becoming a Mythic Plus? That's literally going to be not doable on Tyrannical. It's just gonna be like free on 4.
Upper Mechagon Fortified seems like the freest thing you could imagine. There's just no trash in there.
Yeah, like legit, like two packs of trash.
Yeah, you can just
some slimy boys.
You can ring the slimy things and they don't explode if you ring them on death. I think that's.
I think it has to be disorients.
Okay, disorients on deaths. Okay.
But yeah, like mass disorients stop the explosion.
Yeah. So
what's my good friend Shift Mage doing?
Yep, Dragon's Breath.
Dragon's Breath. Yes.
Blinding Light. Did somebody say Dratnos? Blinding Light.
Yeah, that's good. In-cap roar.
In-cap roar. Mm-hmm.
Trail bear.
Pandarin Quaking Fist or whatever. Quaking Palm.
Quaking Palm.
Yeah. Get him with that. Yeah, in-cap one of them. But if your whole group is Pandarin, you could see this. You wouldn't even have to go Alliance or Horde, right? You could just each Quaking Palm a different one of them. Yeah.
Your whole group is Pandarin.
No, dude, isn't there like fall damage in Upper Mechagon as well? No, there's not. You don't take fall damage when you jump down to Cujo's pit, right?
Nope.
But if there was Pandarin, Pandarin takes reduced fall damage. You know.
I have flap. I don't know about you.
Oh, dude, what about Pandarin for King's Rest for the brute knockup? And you just survive the coming back down because you're Pandarin.
True.
Yeah.
Then you only die to the first part of it where it hits you when you get knocked up.
I bet that's what Method EU did actually for their 22-minute King's Rest was 5 Pandarin. Yeah.
I 100% believe they did not pull that brute though.
Okay. Do you guys know there's a Mechagon punch card, a blue punch card that deploys a parachute whenever you're falling for more than like 2 seconds, and it works in keys.
Trash.
Yeah, but it is pretty good against the brute. If you're a tank, you can just intentionally get knocked up against the brute and then just fall for like 10 seconds and not be hit by anything while you're falling down.
Our Demon Hunters were screaming about it because they were wearing it on Ashvane and they got knocked up, and they would always take literally forever to fall back down to the ground. Dude, I'm a Demon Hunter. I don't need this.
It's big wrong in Eternal Palace because when you get knocked back on Radiance as well, you'll just
Radiance, that's a big
you'll just deploy a parachute and just keep going really fast backwards. No. Yeah. So that is not good. We don't wear that in Raid, but in Keys it's kind of cool in some spots. You can like sky step jump to do the shrine thing that you used to need slow fall for or levitate or whatever. If your whole group just has that blue card, you can just do it, deploy the parachutes that way.
Let's all try that.
That's right.
Yeah.
From the beginning, right?
From the jump from the beginning to the first boss. That was really
cool.
I forget when that was first popularized. Was that in the first MDI or was that Keystone Masters?
No, that was beta.
First MDI, I believe. I remember seeing it. I remember.
Somebody did it in beta.
Okay. Regardless,
we found a lot of those in beta, I think, but it didn't really become a popular strat until we watched the BlizzCon MDI when BFA first came out.
Yeah.
The other thing was in the Talazar where you just slow fall from the start and land at Razan until people realized you could just walk down the ramp and do the same thing.
I forgot about that. I totally forgot about that. Like, wait, you just walk and it's like, oh, I'm just dumb.
Oh no.
Yeah, we were so excited. We were like, let's all slow fall to Razan. It's gonna be sick. I put out a video with that and everything. And everyone was laughing. Then, like a week later, every team in the world just walks down to Razan first and lists.
Yikes!
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
All right, let's move on to talking about our final main topic of the week, which is priority damage, overall damage, the concept of padding. So let's define some terms here, right? Padding is something that people use in both a raid and in a Mythic Plus environment to mean doing like ineffective damage at best or damage that's actively harmful to the group at worst.
Yeah.
So this is something like killing an ad that needs to stay alive, doing a lot of damage to something that is unimportant, doing damage at a time that's not important in a boss's health. So like if a boss is all about damage sub 30% and you blow all your cooldowns at 35% to, do more damage on the overall meters because that lines up better for your cooldowns or whatever, that's padding, right? And that's a bad thing to do. And these are all strategies that cause you to get better parses in raid and reduce your chances of killing the boss. These can be fun things to do on farm.
A great example is those devoted ads that spawn on Queen Ashara. Like if you're saving your cooldowns for those and you pop all of your cooldowns into those ads, you're probably trolling your whole entire group.
Yes, it does depend though, right? Because there are ads that do need to die. So
they do need to die, but you don't need your fire mage's combustion to pop into them most of the time.
Yeah, it basically you want to assign damage to those that loses you the least amount of Queen Ajara damage, right?
Yes.
So you don't want everybody to just kind of beam them and have them all die 5 seconds early. You want them all to die exactly on time, having died to as efficient damage as possible. So like combustion is kind of actually a pretty good thing to spend on this because the combustion on the boss,
do full damage to the boss.
You're doing full damage to the boss.
Different.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't miss boss damage by saving it.
Well, what was it, like Fel Barrage maybe? Like
Fel Barrage, yeah. Fel Barrage is a way that you can assign damage that hurts your single target to do more to these ads. You can use Essence of the Focusing Iris Major and do less boss damage, and anybody then could do more damage to these ads, right? But there are some like trinkets or 30-second cooldowns or whatever that you can save and use them to do ad damage that will hurt your single target a little bit, but give you a big increase in the ad damage. So in raid, whether or not something's padding is kind of dependent on how efficient the damage is, right? How much single target you're giving up. And basically you want to go through the list of, okay, the first thing you want to do to kill these ads is sacrifice, or is all the things that cost no sacrifice, right? So like moving a combustion cast. If you're not going to miss a combustion cast over the course of the fight, moving that combustion cast costs you no damage to the boss, and you should do that thing as the first way that you assign damage to ads. And then you go through the list, and you get to the things that cost you like 5% boss damage, and then you'll do the thing that costs you 10% boss damage. And it's padding if you're somebody who gives up 30% of your boss damage when you don't need to, so that you can be somebody who claims some of that overall damage on those ads.
And that's the point, is that it occurs whenever it's not necessary, right?
Yeah.
And then there's some classes that get better single target from their AoE, like some of the multi-dot specs actually gain single target. So those should be high on your list of like mega efficient, like cleave to single target conversion. So they should be first. Like if you just multi-dot and then the stuff passively dies, you should just keep tunneling the boss.
Mm-hmm.
A really good example of this, my healer buddy friend Jamal and I were running an underout last night, and he has the Queen Ashara staff, which stacks up as you go through a key and then explodes for a large amount of damage late in the key if you never when you get it to proc. So he procs it right as the last boss spawns its last pair of ads. So like all the damage is done on the boss. And he then proceeds to proc his staff and do 8 million damage to all the spores and the boss, which didn't need any more damage or anything. And so
did he kill the ads?
Basically, he got 8 million damage on his meters. Yeah, all the spores died in one hit because they died at anything.
Did he kill the visages?
No. The Titan still had to finish the visages. So that's pure pad. 8 million damage on his overall. It was just pad.
Yeah, that's non-useful damage, right? And there's different kinds of non-useful damage that's not padding, right? Like just anytime you're accidentally or inefficiently doing damage, it's bad. But padding is kind of this derogatory term that people use to describe like the kind of player that looks for opportunities to do this and tunnels into those opportunities, and to the exclusion of doing important damage.
Mostly to the detriment to the group too.
Right, especially like if you go onto a fight and just the person starts in an AoE build and like you have to like really try to get them. You have to like have an officer like individually like look at their talents and look at what the other people of their class ran and be like, why are you running Fel Barrage?
It's always a problem.
Why are you in these talents? That kind of stuff. Those are really problematic players to have in a raid group. But there are, just because the Demon Hunter is running Fel Barrage, like there are some guilds that have got to Hajar presumably and been like, okay, with our comp we need the Demon Hunters to run Fel Barrage to kill these things. So
Yeah, because Demon Hunter Fell Barrage is less of a damage loss than somebody else running like Focusing Iris Major, right?
Exactly. So those like there are cases where Demon Hunters can be running Fell Barrage on that fight and it won't be padding, and they'll have been told to, or they'll have made an intelligent decision that's like these ads need to die, and they're not dying.
It's cooldown usage. Cooldown usage is what it is.
In Mythic Plus, the concept of padding is a little bit different because Mythic Plus, obviously, everything needs to die. Most of the dungeon is an AoE experience, right? The most important parts of the dungeon generally are multi-target. The single target matters too. Boss fights matter too, but almost always there's the overall majority of the time you're spending in a Mythic Plus dungeon, there's multiple targets, right? Less so on Tyrannical Weeks, but still generally true. But the concept of padding and the difference between priority damage and overall damage is still an important concept in Mythic Plus. And I think it's something that people kind of don't really understand is an important concept in Mythic Plus. They'll kind of just look at overall damage for a dungeon and use that to judge a class or a spec. And maybe they'll make a couple exceptions, like removing Faithless Conscript damage from Temple of Sethralis, because that's like obvious big padding or whatever. But other than that, they're just pretty happy with all the damage being equally valued. And the truth is that that's not the case, right? There is damage in Mythic Plus that's more important than other damage, right? Damage to a Void Touched Emissary so that it doesn't get its third cast is way more valuable than damage to the other mobs in the pack at that time, right? So damage being bursty
absolutely.
And like burstiness is a good quality for damage, and that applying it to a single target that needs to die quickly, even though that will mean you're lower on the overall meters, is something that's going to make you more likely to time the key, right? And similarly, like there are places where you'll pull 6 animated droplets into Aquaseer or whatever, and those 6 animated droplets are certainly going to die before Aquaseer dies. It does not matter who deals the damage to them, right? All the damage to those animated droplets is pretty much useless as if it's not like a necrotic week or whatever, and they don't need to die quickly. So whoever is assigning damage to them it's completely irrelevant, right?
I mean, okay, so a good example though is like in general, like your tank and your healer and stuff like that should not be dealing damage to those droplets, because especially if you have something like an outlaw rogue that actually gains single target damage off of cleaving those droplets, they should be DPSing them, not the other people.
Yeah, this used to be a really big deal back when Subtlety Rogue was a thing that you could do in keys. Subtlety Rogue in Shrine, there were, and in a lot of dungeons, there were spots where you would have to tell people to like not AoE, to make
stop trolling
in
me.
fact to make their damage worse, right? Like it's not even that you shouldn't do this ad damage, like you should do less single target damage so that these ads live for longer, because I'm going to turn them into more single target damage than you are giving up here.
I have a great story for this. Last MDI, I played with Greg and Krenix, and we had a strategy in Eye of Ashar where we were pulling these little crabs into the boss, and it was a bolstering setting. And Greg is sitting there legitimately screaming single target Fist of Fury, single target Fist of Fury, and like he's making sure that he's not accidentally Fist of Fury cleaving those crabs, while Krenix is literally standing there spamming Shuriken Storm Eviscerate into the snake boss and like instantly killing it. It was like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm. That's a perfect example.
So Rogue in a nutshell.
Yeah, basically. I mean that's an extreme example, but that is still still an example. Like
single target Fist of Fury, single target Eye Beam, like those are things that you should do if you're playing with a class that benefits from the ads. Now, there's not really something that like that in Mythic Plus anymore, like with Sub Rogue not being a thing anymore.
I mean, it is. People just don't play with the stuff like that, like Shadow Priests and Warlocks and stuff like that.
Yeah, the multi-dotting specs, though.
Elemental Shaman.
They do, like the multi-dotting specs do benefit, but it's not in the same way where like you need to not AoE these 6 mobs, right? It's more like just in these bigger pulls, you have the.
It would save you time, but it's not to the point where it's not that detrimental anymore. Whereas for Sub Rogue, you would actually just be trolling his damage pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess kind of a theory about Mythic Plus damage is that like damage is important based on the ratio of the health to the mobs, right? So like if one target has 6 million health and one target has 3 million health, ideally you should be doing twice as much damage to the target with 6 million health as the target with 3 million health. And so if you're doing 6 million overall DPS or whatever, as long as that damage is split in that proportion of twice as much to the target with twice as much health, then it's efficient damage, is not padding. Yeah. But if you're equally damaging those two, then then half of your damage to that second target is wasted, right? Because it's going to die and stop being useful damage halfway through the pull.
I mean, think about how you have to bolster kill mobs. This is like a prime example of like bolster killing mobs, and in even mobs that have the same health on some weeks, Like you could just give them like an arbitrary number of like priority. Like this is like a level 2 priority mob. Where this over here, this feral bloodswarmer is a level 8 priority mob. So your damage to these living rot droplets is like a 0, but everything else to this feral bloodswarmer is like by far the most important damage in this pack.
Yeah. So that's like not for efficiency of timing of the dungeon, but for survivability of the pack, right? There are mobs that need to die in a certain time frame, and so damage to them is more important. And that is something that is very hard to quantify and very hard to see on an overall meter or anything, but is absolutely important. And bolstering, I think, is a good example of this. Like bolstering, theoretically, if your group has perfect priority damage for speed, bolstering is not an affix you will encounter, right? Because everything will naturally be dying at the right time. So that's like if your group never has problems with bolstering, that means you have a perfect ratio of like priority damage to overall damage, right?
For speed, but at the same time, even on bolstering week, some mobs need to die.
Yeah, bloodswarmers are a good example of this, where like the optimal way for underrot to happen on bolstering is probably for the bloodswarmer to die and every other mob to get bolstered at 50% health, and then probably you pull another bloodswarmer and focus that down, and everything dies simultaneously.
What's the guard captain in King's Rest? The one that does the axe barrage too. That one can also die before the rest of the mobs as well.
Certainly can. And
depends on what you have. If you don't have a knock, maybe the guy that does the channel lightning.
Oh, the lightning. I mean,
you can LOS the guard captain.
Yeah, it depends on your group. Yeah. But there are certainly cases where you need to kill something before the others for survivability.
Absolutely.
And in those cases, priority damage is the most important damage is whatever kills that at the time you need to kill it. And then outside of that is
it comes with experience of like doing the dungeon. You know what's dangerous and you know what's like the most important thing to kill. And if you don't, I would like recommend like watching other people's streams with how they handle trash packs and stuff like that. And you will very quickly learn like what is the most dangerous mob in a pack, like what should be nuked down quickly. Emissaries, like when in doubt, you can just honestly instantly kill an emissary and you'd probably be fine.
Yeah, although don't try to do that with the enchanted emissary because it's not going to die.
I don't know anything about that, but like...
That was 42 million health. It's not that bad.
Yeah, good luck. But yeah, I think you're right. That if in doubt, like over priority damaging is not going to hurt you too much, but over AoE damaging and ignoring under priority damaging is going to hurt you. It's much more likely to cause you to wipe a key.
Yeah.
And this will cause you to have lower overall damage is the thing, right? Like the best way to have high overall damage is to be the person who kills all the droplets instantly as soon as they come in on the boss.
As weird as it is, group wide. Okay, so overall damage should be looked as like a group wide thing, not like an individual per individual basis. Like because like people playing like the most efficiently as they possibly can, sometimes it will allow like your outlaw rogues, your demon hunters, your fury warriors, or whatever else to do like the unholy death knights to do the most amount of AoE possible. However, that may not be the most beneficial for the outlaw rogue to be like, or I guess a good example is Windwalker Monk with like Unholy Death Knight comps in the first season of the MDI that we saw this time around. The Windwalker Monk was literally single targeting Raw, while the Unholy DK was actually just AoEing all the trash in the room. The Windwalker Monk was not touching that boss, or not touching that mod. They were literally just single target.
Right. And the rogue was just cleaving off it to get wit stacks.
Yeah, and that's like a good example. Like the Windwalker's individual damage is going to look lower, but whenever you add all three of them together, it's by far the most efficient thing for you to be doing is letting that Unholy DK like slam into those mobs.
Yeah,
cut and dry. It's hardly ever cut and dry, but really, when you look at any pull or boss in Mythic Plus or in a time setting, you just have to think what is going to take the longest to die, or what is the most dangerous, and that's the goal of the whole group.
It's an efficiency variable. It's an efficiency variable at the end of the day, and you have to like it just comes through understanding like what mobs are important and what aren't at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's kind of there's kind of a binary thing, which is are you going to survive this pull or not, right? And as soon as you can get to yes on that question, everything after that is just to optimize as much as you can for the speed of the pull and for
hit the highest health target. Hit the highest health target.
Efficiency there. And there's like
that's a good way of putting it.
A weak aura that marks the highest health target and has you put your priority damage into that is a good thing. But you know, there's some pulls in Motherload, for instance, where there's like an addled thug, a mech jockey, and a peacekeeper, and the ratio of health between those mobs is like 5 to 3 to 8 or whatever between them. And so you should be AoEing, like you should be hitting all three targets just at that ratio of 8 to 5 to 3 damage between those three mobs or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, those are interesting pulls. Like the lowest health mobs are often the target because they're so dangerous.
Right.
To
Refreshment vendors have the least health when you're pulling them with adult thugs and with mechanized peacekeepers, but they're the ones that need to die first. And then you get to this thing.
Jockey may grease gun you, like
Yeah.
like a bunch of like random shit.
Dude, that's the best part about those is you fail to have a mech jockey pilot, right? And you're literally going to get like 20% less count or whatever from that pull, and it's going to be more deadly because there's going to be grease gun in there instead of the peacekeeper. Yeah, it's rough. But yeah, so that's true. Something that like priority damage on a low health mob might facilitate is chain pulling, right? And chain pulling is a valuable thing to be doing that does speed up a dungeon too. So yeah, that's another variable that it's really hard to quantify. But basically, at the end of the day, the overall damage metric is a useful thing. One characteristic of good Mythic Plusers is that they have really high overall damage numbers, right? Like all the best players you play with are going to have big overall damage generally. Although not so much sub-rogues in Season 1. Like sub-rogues in Season 1 would often be third place on their overall. And they would be the most important.
Historically is always going to be like that, though.
Yeah, and they were the most important person for you timing the key in a lot of those spots because they were doing really important priority damage. But there's not really a spec like that anymore. Usually, like if you're good, you're going to do good overall damage, but it doesn't work the other way around, right? Just maximizing your overall damage isn't the way to be good.
I have a question for you, Dratnos. What do you think about Master Assassin versus like dropping combat and chain pulling? Because in general, you should be looking to continue to chain pull, but that's going to trigger the shit out of your rogue.
It depends on how much. Yeah, it's a trade-off, right? And if you are dropping combat to let your rogue re-stealth, that's a cost you're paying, right? On the other hand, you're getting pre-bots across your group, so that like it's just a balancing act, and nobody in the group should have an emotional attachment to getting the re-stealth or not. Like your rogue should not be yelling about not getting your re-stealth. And this is something like, you know, if it's a case of like your tank pulls when the mob has 1 HP left or whatever, and you could have waited half a second to get a re-stealth, like obviously you should have waited and let the rogue get a re-stealth, and that was a mistake.
Those are hard decisions as a tank. You're like the attack's at 10%, and now you're ready to pull more. But do you do it with a assassination rogue in the group? I never know sometimes.
And okay, so I know in terms of potions, like a good rule of thumb is like every use of a potion across all 5 members ends up saving you somewhere around 3 to 4 seconds.
Right.
I don't know what Master Assassin is for rogue.
Master Assassin's not the thing you're talking about, like Shrouded Suffocation and Subterfuge.
Whatever the re-stealth thing is. It was Mantle of the Master Assassin.
Yeah, Mantle of the Master Assassin got turned into a talent, Master Assassin, which is not the talent that we take now.
Okay, never mind. So yeah, I'm referring to something else then.
Yeah,
Shrouded Suffocation traits.
Shrouded Suffocation traits and the Subterfuge talent, which is in the same vein as the Master Assassin talent.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically. Coming out of stealth gives you 3 big Garrotes that do a lot of extra damage, and it can be useful. Those Garrotes will silence as well, which is nice. So that can be really important on some pulls. But yeah, like if the rogue is planning to use their Vendetta, it's pretty great to have a re-stealth for the Vendetta. That is, especially if they're playing the Exsanguinate talent. But basically, like you need to have a conversation with your rogue as a tank. Like if you're going to play with an assassination rogue a lot, you need to talk to them and figure out like, okay, we're doing this pull now, like, how important is the re-stealth for you? Can I pull more now? Yeah. Like, what's going to cost us more time? And at the end of the day, this is a big drawback to Assassination Rogue, is that Assassination Rogue gives this damage that you only get if you pull less efficiently, right? And that's a drawback.
Very rarely actually beneficial. It's actually it's more often than not detrimental, because, like, if the pack is at 10% health, more often than not, it's going to end up lasting, like, 10-15 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're literally better off just not even getting your second round of potion, getting more potions and re-stealth. It's like better off just like chain pulling. Like, all right.
Yeah. But the Assassination Rogue in that spot is just thinking about how bad it is for their damage that they're not, getting their re-stealth. And that's a really bad mindset to have. So definitely, if you're one of these players who requires some amount of catering to do optimal damage, you need to have a really good assessment of how much damage you're getting from that, so that you can communicate to your group, like, hey, this is worth it, or hey, this is not worth it. Like, go without me. I don't care. I don't need my re-stealth. And that's something that a lot of good players, you'll hear them say, is like, I don't care. I don't need this. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Stick to the plan. The plan is more important here than my thing.
Yeah, I agree. It does have a little factor of how dangerous are the casters in the next pack with an Assassination Rogue, because you could want the Garrotes for the casters for sure, just to bring them into the pull or to live a few extra casts. Yeah, but usually it is just is this going to be more damage if I wait, or do I go?
And it's like, if you're getting to the range of like 10 or 15 seconds, it's almost never worth it to wait. Like,
Oh yeah,
You
absolutely
just
not.
get in there, and the rogue will complain, and that's that's life. You got to do it. That's the way to time the dungeon. Okay.
One last thing on that is I think necrotic is really good for assassination rows because you want to drop the pull, so you drop your necrotic stacks and then you pull. But it's just an afterthought.
All right, let's dropping combat is a thing. Sometimes you need to do it for CC. There's a lot of reasons to drop combat, but if you don't have any of those reasons active, the pure damage is usually not worth all that many seconds.
Yeah.
All right, let's close out our show this week with some Q&A that we've gotten on Twitter here. So the first one comes from Nothix at the Nothix, who asks, "I'd like to hear what you think about the balance of affixes. How are this season's affix combos compared to last, and why is Sanguine the worst?" I don't think Sanguine is the worst. I think Sanguine is not great, but it's not one of the worst affixes on the calendar or anything. I do think Bursting Necrotic was like worse than any of the affix combos that was active in previous seasons. Maybe Teaming Explosive Fortified was like pretty high up there. Teaming Quaking Fortified, those were pretty hard weeks, but Bursting Necrotic was mean. So there are some
I'll be
rough
honest,
ones, but I think most of them are better this season than last season.
As a singular affix, I think Grievous and Quaking are like the worst by like a lot.
Agreed.
It's just so stupid because Quaking will actually be your top damage on the whole entire group by like a significant amount too, whereas no other affix is like that.
It's true. I don't think the any small affix in general is that bad. Like Sanguine really isn't that bad to me. It's when it's paired with things like Void Week. I think the Beguiling rotation is actually the worst part of it, rather than the individual level 4 or level 7 affixes.
So you think Void Week is the worst affix on the calendar?
Yeah,
I think that might be true. Yeah,
even though it's Sanguine, was it Sanguine Quaking this week, which is actually a pretty decent combo for pushing. Void makes it really, really difficult just because of Quaking comboing with it or Sanguine on top of everything.
All right, our next question comes from CatGay13, who says, regarding padding, I think there absolutely is padding. For example, I don't think you need 3 Focusing Iris and Purification Protocol for every dungeon, especially on Tyrannical weeks. How does this change in higher keys? I've only done 16s and 17s this season yet. So yeah, this is an interesting thing, like changing your build based on Tyrannical or Fortified to do more priority damage, to do less AoE damage isn't a useful thing to do. Generally, I think like Focusing Iris and Purification Protocol are pretty small single target sacrifices for a lot of AoE, so I think they're generally worth using in any Keystone setting. Like anytime you're giving, like, okay, Focusing Iris Major sims like very slightly behind whatever your best single target major is, and also has the added benefit of being a huge AoE cooldown. So anytime you can give up a tiny bit of single target for a huge amount of AoE, regardless of what the affixes are, you should do that in Mythic Plus.
I think it also depends on class, because for Bounce Druid, I could actually gain just a lot of single target damage. I could gain somewhere in the range of like 5 to 7% single target. So
you have Vision of Perfection being really good for you, right?
So it's a little bit. I think it also does depend on class,
True.
but on a similar level, like I tell people, if you're doing lower level keys, you should always default back to Focusing Iris. Like Focusing Iris for lower level stuff, whenever the pack is going to instantly die inside of all 3 of your I-beams, is pretty simple.
Yeah, and I think that you need to look at your class, right? Basically, it's always just a question of how much single target you're giving up for the AoE. And on a high Tyrannical week, especially like Tyrannical King's Rest, Tyrannical Temple, you can be willing to give up, your AoE if it gets you back 5% single target or whatever. But if it's only 1% of your single target, you should just always take the Focusing Iris. All right, and our final question for today comes from Justin, who asks, is Void really that bad? Interrupts are huge and Tides negates that. Usually line of sight for Void somewhere nearby. So he thinks Tide weeks is worse than Void weeks.
I think the gist of that one is, as we discussed earlier, Tides you can really kind of work around easily, where you can separate out of the pack completely, never even engage in combat, or you can have the healer CC it over and over again, or someone else in the group solo tank it away. Whereas Void is planted and sometimes un-LOSable.
So I think that our experience with Voids has been in these like high keys with a coordinated group trying to push or whatever, and in those cases there's not good counterplay to the Voids. Whereas for a group that is just doing like 14s or whatever and not super coordinated, Voids are probably easier to deal with than these other ones, because the answer is always the same. You just DPS the Void and that works and you're happy with it. And you can line them if you need to, and it's okay if you lose some efficiency doing that. Whereas the Tides can often throw a wrench that require you to have a solution to it. So we
It
would rather
requires your healer to be good. Yeah, it requires your healer to actually be good. I assume the Arcane Emissary is also equally bad for that reason alone, because like if your healer doesn't know what the hell he's doing, then he's probably going to troll you with the Arcane Emissary.
Yeah.
True.
Or like if the healer doesn't know it's their job, or if your healer is playing something other than a Resto Druid, it also gets a lot harder to interact with both the Tides and the Enchanted. But in these higher push groups, those are very often the healer that most groups are running with. Yeah.
There definitely is a good point to make. Like in MDI level keys and 18s, voids die so fast that they're hardly ever an issue.
Mhm.
And then tides are much harder because you have to pull big and you have a ton of mobs that you can't kite or interrupt.
Yeah.
So I can see the point there for sure.
I guess it's kind of a push week or a pushing keys high versus kind of farming low keys or speed running MDI keys. Those all change which of the emissaries are hardest, and we really were targeting the high push keys. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's
a good point though. I mean, that is.
I think it is a good point. Yeah, and I think it certainly is something that is an experience that different people. The emissaries are different to different people into different groups.
Absolutely.
All right, that's going to be all for our 13th episode here of the Titanforge podcast. We will be back next week at the usual places, at the usual times. That will continue until the MDI is over, so that'll be Fridays until the MDI is done. And then we'll be back to our usual schedule. Remember to check out our Patreon if you'd like to support us there. Get on our Discord regardless. Whether or not you want to support us on Patreon, get in our Discord. It'll be a cool place. We'll be hanging out there all the time, maybe. And follow us on Twitter.
For sure we'll be hanging out there.
For sure, maybe. Definitely.
What the hell, Dratnos?
Probably. All right. I'll see everybody next week. Have a great MDI, and bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the support.